All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name's Luke Harvey. I run Riverview Road Apiary. Today, I'm going to talk about what it takes for me to run my small scale apiary. Uh, Here's an outline of things I'm going to talk about. I'll leave this up here for a second, but this is all the slides that we'll be talking about today. So, there's the Beekeeper movie when it came out. And I had some friends wear some old bee suits. But I run about 70 to 100 hives across central Illinois, mostly in the Peoria area. My focus as an apiary is primarily for the bees and for education and for partnerships with honeybees, not so much with honey and wax goods and everything else. Those pay for the rest of my uh, passions, but really it's I'm more passionate about honeybees themselves. We do produce honey. We do produce candles and lip balms and hand lotions. We sell nukes in the spring and oftentimes in the summer. And then we also will sell queens that we graft off of our hives that are overwintered stock. I'm not treatment free. I do treat with oxalic acid. I also do mite counts. I try to be pretty fastidious about my um, in my apiary, keeping things clean, but I also try to keep good tracks of my queen rearing and our genetics for those. I also do some hosting services called my Bee Friend hosting, and then I do training programs, honey tastings, hive tours, and swarm captures. We also do cutouts, which is removing hive bees from a wall in buildings. I'm going to talk about most of those things. So here in the Midwest, we have a challenge, certainly more challenges as time goes on. As we were talking before this meeting started, we have this year is actually probably the worst year I've had for um, small hive beetles. I've also had quite a few problems with people giving me, I just inherited about 8 or 9 wax moth filled supers where they just have just totally destroyed everything in it. We've got uncertain honey flow. We've got unusual weather patterns. The uncertain honey flow I found this year from September onward, my hives basically didn't put on a ton of weight unless they were on a specific field for that was flowering. So I put 6 hives on a field of um, buckwheat, and then on that buckwheat field, those are my hives that actually gained weight from September forward. None of my hives lost weight during that time frame, but they sustained, which is pretty disappointing because our major honey flow during this time should be um, goldenrod, and goldenrod has not been huge in our area. It's kind of hit or miss, um, which is our unusual weather patterns that we have right now. If you listen to the podcast that I do, which is Beekeeping Buddies, we talk about the weather almost every single episode. But this year we've had a really long uh, summer, is what I would call it. October 15th is usually our first frost date in Illinois. It has been plus or minus a day for probably the last 7 years at least. Um, this year, I don't think we're going to see frost until maybe the end of October, which will be great for trick-or-treaters, but probably shows that we're going to be having a changing weather and pattern. In fact, Illinois, the area that we were in, we were just shifted one growth area up for as far as planting goes. That happened last year. Uh, there's lots of interest, as I think most of you on here are beekeepers. There's lots of interest in beekeeping, but this is a time skill hobby for those new people that are trying to get into it, which means there's a lot to learn, especially the first couple years. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. For the first couple years, the bees will survive in spite of you, not because of you. And because of that high amount of time it takes to learn things, and then the skill that it takes to manage those hives, lots of beekeepers, in fact, the majority of beekeepers don't last more than 2 years. So you have a lot of people that are kind of beekeepers, but very generally and mostly afraid of their honeybees. The local honey prices versus cost of operation is also something that you have to overcome as a beekeeper. Mostly is I'm finding that many beekeepers in our area, actually throughout the United States, kind of undervalue the products that they make, the, be it wax or honey or even services for cutting things out. And I'll talk about costs of those products later on. And then another challenge that I have is keeping a stable, diversified income. What I mean by that is if you're going to sell honey and being able to sell it all year to support the business, if you're running a business like I am, that's you need. I am finding that I need multiple sources of income. I don't have to be good at all of them, but I usually have to have multiple ways to make money during the year to keep the business cost positive or profitable. So I have a new approach. I can't really survive on honey alone. For all of those that don't know, I am a biomedical engineer. I went to school at University of Illinois, and I just retired last year from Caterpillar. Uh, I worked there for about 17 years, and I'd worked in GE before. I'm 46, so I retired quite early. Most of my money for retirement came from stocks. So the stock market's been very good to me, and then I'm able to pursue this passion. So right now, my business could not survive on honey alone. I make somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500 pounds of honey per year, and I will usually sell out of my honey around January or February. This year I may not. Sales have been pretty slow, but anyway, that's usually what a large portion of my income is from. However, I also do education and training. So for new beekeepers, I run training courses in the beginning of the year. I saw an issue with how training was done here as a beekeeping community and found that people didn't have any hands-on uh, education as part of that education. So as somebody just recently said to me, it's kind of like watching videos and listening to someone tell you how to ride a bike and then going out and expecting to become an expert without ever having been on a bike. It's kind of how beekeeping is too. We tell you how to become a beekeeper, but unless you actually put your hands or face in a hive, it's not you don't know really what you're doing. I also do hive hosting, and that hive hosting is when the customers own the hives and they have hives on their property, and I manage that hive for them. It's it means that I do a lot of traveling around the area as I need to be in those hives. Usually, this time of year, I'm in the hives maybe twice a week, or twice a month, once a week, and in doing that, I'm able to go and um, one, educate more. I get to talk to them about the hives that are on their property, and two, they pay me to manage those hives. I'm going to talk about that in this slide, the Bee Friend program. That's my program. It started because somebody told me this. I want a hive, but that's a lot of work, and I thought, well, that's an opportunity for me to fix an issue that's out there in the world. So what we do is the hives managed for home or business. So in that management, I will buy the equipment. So all of the hive, the boxes, as well as the colony inside. I will treat that equipment. I use oxalic acid to treat the hive, the colonies, or if hive beetles are really bad, I'll use, hive beetle treatments, either a thin CD case or a hive beetle trap on the top. I also do splits from it. This is when that colony is really, really strong in summer. Usually I will go and make a 5 frame split off of it. It gives them a little bit more space, slows it down a little bit. and then it gives me a colony separate from that main colony that I can manage. So if there is a problem with that main colony, I have a replacement colony for it. The things that you have to be aware of in this is that there is an equipment cost every year, a reoccurring equipment cost. About 10% of the frames in the colonies need to be replaced every year, is my general rule of thumb. And that's usually what I find is that I'm pulling out of the 20 frames, I'm pulling two that are either not drawn well, need to be redrawn, or damaged some way. You have to account for your travel time as well as the miles that you're putting on your vehicle. So that's something that I have worked into the quotes when I quote people. The extracting equipment is equipment I already own and have. The interesting part that I'm seeing more recently is that there's folks that would like for me to bring my extracting equipment to them and extract there. That is something that I'll do. So the customer gets one tasting, honey tasting, or a meeting. Not everybody takes me up on it. They, because it requires some organization on their end to put everything together, choosing a date and getting people invited. Uh, and if they want to do an extracting event instead, I'll do an extracting event, but they do have to have a location for it. Having like um, I'm sorry, having like just a kitchen or something isn't ideal for that. It needs to be a building or something else. So many people have outbuildings. I've done one this year in an outbuilding. As part of this service, I also do bottling. So you need to keep bottling costs in mind. The I limit the bottles to 100 bottles. So there are some hives that will produce more than 100 bottles, but per site gets 100 bottles of whatever size that they want. Many people want like a 3 ounce bottle, like a skep hive that you can get from Dedant or Blue Sky. Those are nice little tiny gift size bottles. However, if you have 100 pounds, you end up with hundreds of bottles, and it's more than I really want to make available for those customers. So they'll pay me. I'll charge extra for those bottles.
A quick question.
Yeah.
So after, I mean, maybe a site might have 10 hives or X many hives.
Yes.
After 100 bottles, are you then just giving them like 5-gallon buckets
I'm
and then
not.
they can do with it with what they want or
No, because with 5 gallon, it's a great question, Val. Uh, After what ends up happening is that when you give them a 5 gallon bucket, they never move it out of it. And I have
Hmm.
some of them will, but most of them don't because they
Really?
don't,
Why? Oh,
they just don't. It just takes
hmm.
time to bottle something. It has to have they have like I have to set up a gate and a bucket with it, but they tend not to do so I have 25 locations that does do this currently. When I did this to start with, I gave one of my locations a 5 gallon bucket, right, with 50 pounds of honey ish,
Yeah.
because they insisted that's what they wanted.
Okay.
And then they, and then 2 years later, they came back and asked what they should do with this crystallized bucket of honey. And I realized that because of that, they're just they're just not going to um it's just not going to work, right? That's not I want them to be engaged with their bees, and if they have that, um and they're not going to touch that 5 gallon bucket, I need to give them something more accessible. So if you give them single pound bottles that match the things that I use anyway, I have a buyback program in there. Well, I'll buy it back I base it off of whatever the cost of honey is currently, and I double it, and then I buy it back from them for that cost. And I've never actually had anybody sell me back their honey. They usually give it away as gifts, is what I'm finding. I ask
So
all the time.
they fill the the 100 bottles and then you give them 1 pound bottles or
So the 100 bottles are in whatever sizes they'd like.
okay.
And right. And so if their hive makes 50 bottles, like 50 pounds, then they have 50 bottle. Like if they want 1 pound bottles, then they get 50 50 bottles total, right? If they want 3 ounce bottles, right? So it's three times 150 ish, a little bit more. Then they still get the 100 bottles, and they pay me it's $50 basically for those 50 extra bottles. So I charge another $50 to
Oh, I see.
fill
Okay.
fill for the rest of
I,
them.
s- I made the wrong assumption. I assumed that the rest of it was just going to be like, here it is in bulk or,
Oh
you know,
no, no,
okay.
yeah,
Gotcha. All right.
yeah. I don't give it to them in bulk. They get it bottled in some manner, and they get to choose the manner, and they get 100. They After 100 bottles, they pay me for the difference of any bottles extra that they use past that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, no, great question. It was, and that was a learning experience for me. I had a site that had 2 hives, and they made like each hive made about 100 pounds of honey, and so then I had 200 pounds of honey that I had to bottle and give to them, and I was out basically $100 because I bottled plus my time for bottling that much, um, for their honey, and they still really did want it all, and they had no issue paying for the extra. I got no complaints about it. They said, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." The other nice part about it is that if I do ever run into somebody that says I really don't have anything to do with this much ever, uh, then
Then the question again.
then I can buy it back from them, and it matches all of my honey. I already know where the honey's from, and I know that it's been extracted it to a standard that I will accept, and then I even know like the water level is correct in it. Uh, I do colony replacements as well. So if the hive fails over winter, I do a replacement on it. My replacement date is at the end of April. So I usually use my own stock for those replacements. Um, you have to be very careful in using, at least for me, I want the customers' bees to be the best bees out there. So I was giving away my best stock, and that's probably not a great path going forward. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. If it's a small colony, it can grow, and if you feed it and take care of it, it can grow. They can still get honey off of it, and they still get to watch the bees. Most of my customers watch bees. Uh, I put them near some place where they can sit inside or a screen patio, and they'll watch them come and go. Amanda asked if these customers ever come out to watch or see me in the hives. They will come out and watch. So I bring extra suits. I always have extra suits in my car, at least 2 extra suits. Most of the customers can see me work the hive from a location where from inside. There is one customer out of my all of my customers that I have right now that will come out to the hive, wants to be in the hives with me. So he follows along, uh, to the point where he would like for me to stand there, and he removes frames and is doing the beekeeping. And realistically, if that's what happens, is that from the service I get a beekeeper, and then he no longer needs me as someone, then that's okay for me, right? They've learned to be a beekeeper. I've been paid for my time and the equipment and everything else. That's an okay extension of what I do, in my opinion. I found that I can probably take another 10 hives, and then I would be at my capacity for being able to manage other people's hives. Uh, so as part of this, what they get, we talked about the packaged honey. Uh, I do have a customer next year that wants it for pollination services. They also get an education and then a honey tasting event. A honey tasting event, for those that haven't done it before, is the customer decides on a date, and they set up a location. Either it's usually in their home, their kitchen area. They invite people over, and I'll bring honey over for people to try. I have a escargot plates, is what they are, that are divided up. And then I have one that is marked with the different kinds of honeys that are on there. Any more than 5, it tends to be overwhelming, and they can't seem to, you can't really taste the differences in the honey past then. But I have starkly different tasting honeys that they're able to try. Um, Usually I'll go from light to dark, and then I have in my house, I have about 120 varietals that I've collected on my travels across the United States and the world, and anything that I think is really interesting for people to try, that's what I bring. During the event, I go talk about basic bee facts, how a hive works, and things like that. They're pretty good events. I do
Pretty
also.
busy. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a
Who
question, Laura?
takes the bees? I know that. It's a
Um,
full-time job.
it is full time. Yes. Yeah, I'm more busy now than when I was working full time. The honey tasting events I charge usually per person, and it depends on who I'm presenting for as well. This also works really well for educational areas, so homeschooling and things like that. I give homeschoolers a price break, but you also see that. The nice thing about this is that all these things give me like a more of a predictable annual revenue. Right? I know how many hives I'm managing. If they produce honey, that's great. If they don't produce honey, then that's okay too. There's distributed apiary locations, so beekeeping is very local. So mine are mostly down by the river. However, because I'm managing these other hives, they're in other locations, so I get to see what the weather is doing and what the flowers and things are doing for those areas. I also get quite a few referrals off of those sites. The the Chillicothe Library is one of my sites. I've gotten a few referrals from that because it's out in their lobby area, kind of out off of a, I don't know, it's a sitting area that people don't use off of the library. The hive's there and people watch it. They ask about it and then they refer them to me. The other nice part about the library is that the library sells all of their honey to library guests. They produced about 150 pounds this year, and they sold all of that out within the first 2 weeks of me extracting it. Scott, you're asking how long does tasting usually last, and is there anything else served? Tasting usually lasts about an hour, maybe two, depending if it's a night. If it's a at somebody's house and hosted there, it's about two. If it's in my apiary, I'll talk for one. If they want to go out and see the bees, then I'll do usually tack that on and just we'll go out and look at the bees where the honey came from. There's if it's in my apiary and because it's a ticketed event, there's some very specific rules for the Midwest, for at least for Illinois. Since it's in my area and people have paid tickets for it, then I usually have fruits that go along with the varietals that I'm serving, the varietals of honeys that I'm serving. The so I could do that. If it's in somebody else's home, uh, I have one every year from the same customer, and she makes all kinds of things. And then the honey tasting is the dessert portion of the meal. And so you get to have the sweets of honeys for dessert. If I've also done it at a bar. Uh, in the bar, they served mixed drinks, honey based mixed drinks. I wasn't able to. That's not me, right? That's the bar doing it. So depending on where you're at, there's going to be food laws and regulations. Uh, the I would have plates on hand. Expecting to use a plate that's flat. The honey's all mix up, and you lose some of the uniqueness of the flavors. So um, that's there's some pre-purchase costs that would go into it beforehand, but like always set it up and then get people to book it and then buy stuff for it. Don't do it the other way around. Um, the other one is that's a potential. I thought it would be a potential cheap, quality honey source. That's has not proven to be true, right? It's no one sold their honey back to me. Once people have it, they don't want to give it up. But the community outreach has been fantastic. That portion of it has, I've talked to hundreds of people at this point about honeybees that would never ever have seen me or known about bees or, know the difference between a honeybee and a yellow jacket. And people are super excited to hear about bees. So that's a really fun portion of that. So education and training. I do have people that uh, that I do train. So here's pictures. I did a beekeeping class, the lower right-hand corner. That's me and my wife. We went to Purdue and did a queen rearing course. I have reared queens in the past, but I really wanted somebody to, um, I really wanted somebody that had taught classes in like a quote unquote professional education section to teach me. And so I went to their class. Their class was $200. And um, I was pretty shocked at that price point because the picture just to the left of that is the first ever queen rearing course that I put on. That's my apiary. That's the honey. I'm standing in front of, or standing in front of the honey house in that one. You can see the river around back in the left-hand corner of that. But it was an excellent class that we put on. We charged $50 per person, which is way too cheap. For the $50, they got a frame, as well as caps, as well as a grafting tool. And we spent about 4 hours going through teaching about honeybees and queen rearing. The grafting was varied in success depending on the person, but I thought that was a very good learning experience for me and for our local people who should be raising their own queens, in my opinion. The next picture over is on the top over and then over the right-hand corner. That's Hank. He's a 16-year-old that worked with me this year. You can see the frame that he's holding. That's actually in the library. That's the corner where that's their library hive. That's a frame of brood. Hank working as a 16-year-old was the first time I've actually worked with somebody that young, and he was exciting to work with. I will probably try to be expanding over to the IBC this coming year, which is our local high school, with a program for them. And then somebody that was working at the library, I was bringing out frames of honey, and she was actually ends up being my neighbor. She was super excited to hold a frame of honey. So that's their nice capped comb that they had from the library again. So in this education and training, I originally was worried that I was creating a competition for me, right? That there'd be other people that would be making honey and then to be selling it, and then I'd have to compete with them and everything else. It was not the case. It has not been the case. It's more of a community investment. And that's a thought that I had maybe 8 or 9 years ago. But that's just not what we're seeing. What I'm seeing is that there's community investment in there as beekeepers. We're working together for people. We're educating people. It's just uh, everybody seems to be benefiting from it, and compared to creating an environment that's more toxic. So I'm really happy to continue this education path, reaching out to people and explaining how I found things work best for me. So here's where I reach out. I do fairs and market events. I have not done, the library holds a market event. The local, I forgot what it's called, the greenhouse area in Peoria, the Botanical Gardens, they hold a marketing event that they invite me to every year. And there's a few others that I'm involved in. There's one in the state level with the in Springfield, and then um, I don't. Then there's not many others I go to other than those 3 or 4 per year. There's one for Christmas as well. That's really fun to participate in. Um, I only participate in those mostly to talk about bees and to um, sell honey. I sell. It doesn't seem to matter what event I go to. It always seems to be I sell roughly $300 to $400 a day ish, and it just depends on how many days it goes. The During those events, I do sell things like bottles and um, wax and hand lotions and lip balm and honey. Honey obviously sells the best. And then I also have a spring and fall honey. I particularly don't appreciate the flavors of goldenrod in my honey. I think it's very farmy. It's too farmy for me. And because of that, I didn't think anybody else would like it either. However, I found that that's probably one of my best selling honeys in those markets because people want something that tastes different. And that is something that tastes very different. So it's a more savory honey rather than a sweet. Uh, I also, in the picture in the bottom, I do apiary tours. And that apiary tour, I schedule those every weekend in the summer. I schedule them all through Eventbrite, and I get, I won't let more than 5 people join because more than 5 people is too much for me to manage. If they big, then I'll do more. The largest group I've done is 10. 10 people was pretty rough to, one, keep everyone's attention, but two, to keep people from wandering and doing silly things. So keeping them safe is my primary course of action on there. I also make them sign a waiver that says if they get stung, they understand that beekeeping is, you're going to be out in bees. It may be dangerous. You may get stung. And so uh, for that one, it takes maybe 1 to 2 hours, 2 hours on the long end of things. The most exciting time that I had there was as we were standing there, a hive swarmed. So they got to watch me catch a swarm, and we're super excited about that as well. I also do a podcast with Steve Schmidt. Steve is um, Steve was my mentor when I started in beekeeping. Uh, the podcast is called Beekeeping Buddies. We just passed 4,000 listens, and just had Randy McCaffrey on there, Dirt Rooster. But we talk about beekeeping. That's entirely sponsored by my apiary. I pay for that, and then I also do the editing for that. I sat down recently and determined how much time I have actually put into that podcast, and it's a lot more than I'd like to admit. But it's fun, and that's something I do for fun and also for outreach, right? Just so people get to listen and talk, and we answer some questions for folks as well on there. So product diversification, I talked about this earlier. Uh, there is, I could just sell honey, and I would do okay just selling honey. I don't think I would succeed long term as an apiary just selling honey. I don't have enough hives, and I don't produce enough to compete with the 1,000+ colony rearing folks out there. So I've gone into diversification instead. I've added a hand lotion, which is that picture on the top. I've added lip balm, which is the picture in the middle. And then the picture in the bottle is not mine, but I'll talk about it just in a second because there's an important lesson to be learned from this. This was another master beekeeper from my course from the University of Montana. That's his bottles. Those bottles I sell separately, but that's how he bottles his honey. So to my second bullet point, people pay for value added products. And what I mean by that is that people will pay for honey. They will pay more for creamed honey or whipped honey, and they'll pay more for things like a hot honey, right? I've partnered with a local hot sauce maker and Blackbeard Canning. And Blackbeard Canning uses my honey in their hot sauces, but they also have make a really quite a few actually now types of hot honey that have good flavor to them. And he runs that product by me before he actually markets anything. Right? He gives it to me and has me try it, and we talk about water content and crystallization and things like that. It's an excellent product. He makes excellent products in general. So people are paying more for those products that you've done something to, right? They'll buy beeswax from you, and they'll buy buckets of honey, as we talked about earlier. They'll pay more for you bottling it, for you doing something to it, and doing something to it, maybe making it look prettier. So The 1622 honey in the right-hand corner, I believe, sells for $30 a pound. It might be $40 a pound. It was more than double what I charge, but he has a really nice bottle. He will package it for folks and will send it to folks. And there's usually wax on the bottles as well with wax seals. So I have found that if you focus on your quality, your presentation, and your story, you can extract more value from your honey or products that will help your store long term than if you necessarily go with volume. So and that goes for everything. So you're selling an experience, not an object. People like experiences and they will pay for experiences and they'll actually come back for experiences. They'll also come back for consumable things. So honey is a very nice thing that you'll eventually run out of. But if you sell an experience with that honey, you will get more loyal customers that will return regularly and see the value in the product that you're charging for. So nukes and hive growth. Yeah, Amanda's correct. She has an observation hive at the farmer's market, brings back with brings people back with their kids weekly. Kids love to see observation hives. You have to be very careful with them because oftentimes you're sacrificing, if it's a one frame one, you're sacrificing those bees for people seeing them. I have a 6 frame observation hive. So there's a single frame above and there's 5 frames below. I really like that one because I can bring it to the farmer's market, close it up for a day, and bring it back to site, and they'll survive. So those are usually sold at like Dedant and things like that. They're more expensive, but I like those for survivability a little bit better. Nukes and hive growth. I last year I sold my first nukes from a supplier, and I know the supplier pretty well. I would say well. I know the supplier well. I was disappointed with the packages that we were getting in the area. So, and there's a big push for our clubs for packages. This is actually one of the nukes that I sold. It's bursting at the edges. It's about ready to swarm, actually. So what I found was that the nukes that I sold were really strong to the point of they're ready to swarm. And if folks that I sold them to weren't on it and weren't ready for the explosive growth that nuke is going to have, then they oftentimes would swarm on them. There's not much I can do for them at that point, but um, those it's a much different story than say having a package of bees. The growth difference is significant and obvious. The great positive of this is that you'll have strong genetics. The nukes support other beekeeper stock, so anything that I brought in that I didn't sell went to my stock and replaced hives that didn't make it through the winter. And they come in April timeframe. That's an early season income source. It's also an early season outlay, right? You have to buy the nukes, have to go get the nukes, have to have some way to move the nukes, and that all costs money. But you also get to sell them, and people pay for them, and you also have good genetics that you're spreading in your area. So the negatives, some will die, and some will blame you. I did have a nuke that I sold to a customer this year, and it died. And then I replaced the nuke with it for free because I thought it was something that was wrong with the nuke. And then the next one died. At which point I said, I don't think it's the nukes. The one I replaced it with was extremely strong. I don't think it's the nukes. I think you're doing something on your end. I'm not sure what it is. I'm happy to come out and help you. But that's what ended up happening uh, in my first year of doing it. If you're moving them, transportation can be tough. It's usually for where I bought my nukes, they're from further south, and that south was about a 12-hour drive. And so driving down and driving back, it's just a long time on the road. Uh, there are folks that will buy nukes from you and then will not show up until much later. You have to be aware of that if you're selling those and have to have extra equipment available, particularly to move the nukes into. So the longest one that I had this year was that somebody bought them from me to pick up in April and they picked it up in July. So that was basically a hive at that point. I still sold them the 5 frame nuke, right? So I pulled 5 frames out of the middle with the bees and the queen, and they got that. And then I basically had a split, walk away split, right? That stayed on property. The other thing is that you have to get them inspected. You have to be able to reach out to your local inspector, at least in Illinois, and get them inspected. So I got them inspected both where I bought them from and then also at my apiary at home. So you have to be comfortable with your apiary inspector and be comfortable if they're telling you, hey, these have diseases, these have whatever on them, right? You got to get rid of them. You have to be comfortable with that too. So that's a risk that you're taking as an apiary. Uh, your your profits are going to vary depending on who you get them from, and you have to know those people well. So I would not buy them from somebody, a Joe Schmo. I would just you have to have a connection that you make and go. I personally would prefer go and check out their apiary where they're selling these nukes from, so that you're not moving in stuff like EFB or AFB or some other strange disease or whatever. We also do cutouts, and they are hard work. We had a JLG lift. The reason we hired that JLG lift was because we had 3 cutouts. All were at the top of the second floor level or higher, um, for an apartment complex. They take 4 to 6 hours to do these cutouts, and then probably another hour or two for setup. If you're not familiar or comfortable with taking an angry hive apart, you should not do a cutout. I would not suggest doing it. People also, I don't believe, are charging enough for cutouts. People locally really would like for you to do them for free. If you do them for free, that's your prerogative. However, that is too much hard work for me to do for free. And you're also gonna get stung. It's kind of strange. You think the guy up in the boom or the lift are the ones that would get stung. That's not Tends not to be the case. What I found that the person that's rubber banding those combs into frames is the person that gets stung from the bees that are on the comb, that are left on the comb, or are flown onto the comb, and they're behind the comb, and you're handling it, and they sting you. It's almost always in the sun, or there might be a little bit of shade, but almost always in the sun. And you have to know construction. So Steve is the two of us that knows construction. I know bees and I like talking to people. So that's what I do. I do the talking and billing and and some of the bee stuff and Steve does most of the cutouts as far as cutting into the house or apartment and then hands it off and I do the vacuuming portion of it. So some lessons I've learned from this is get paid before if it's a residency, you need to get paid before your work starts. Before you cut a hole in the wall, they have to understand how much you're charging and you need to get paid that amount before you start. I have had 3 customers now. You'd think I'd learn it after one, but I'm a beekeeper and it takes more than one sting to deter me. I've had 3 customers not pay me for cutout work that I've done. Checks in the mail sort of thing. One of them actually was for a apartment complex that they owned, said that they didn't know what I was talking about. They didn't have bees in their apartment and they didn't need to pay me because they don't have any bees. And another one, they didn't tell me that they were up against hard times. We finished the cutout, which was actually a very difficult one that took about 6 hours, and they left before we were finished. And eventually called me back and said, "Yeah, we don't have any money to pay for this, and we can't." So get paid before your work starts. Uh, I will say that the colonies that you do cutouts on survive maybe 50% of the time, maybe 75, but just to be safe, 50% of the time. They often will just kind of leave the hive that you place them into and go into boost your other populations. They will drift to your other hives. They'll 100% drift to your other hives anyway, but even if you have their queen, they'll drift. Uh, the honey harvest that you get from that, usually from the one that in that picture that Steve is doing, we got about 10 pounds of honey. It really wasn't very much, and that was at the height of the season. The one that's in that wall that's in the closet in the lower right hand corner, that one was all about 20 pounds of honey. And then the one that's in that tree that's in the cutout in the middle, we got no honey because that tree had fallen over and the hive beetles had moved in and slimed the honey. We got now we got a bee vac full of bees, but we got no honey from it. It's almost always an emergency when they call you and they need it done. Not now, they need it done yesterday. Uh, Even though and the bees have always just moved into the whatever the enclosure is, or they've never been there before. Along those lines. I mean, it's asking why the survival rate's so low. It's not a nice simple process to move them out of their colony. And I don't think that their bees are dying. There are certainly some that die, but you're really cutting out. It's really like you're trying to make them into a forced swarm. And that forced swarm, you have to have the queen. So I would say 75% of the time we find the queen, and that the rest that 25%, either the hive swarmed, which is how the people realized that they had a hive in their wall because they saw the giant swarm of bees leave, or they're queenless for some other reason. So I think hives in nature that are not managed colonies swarm a lot more often, and basically you're taking them out of their built colony and going through and forcing them into another location, which they may or may not like. Lots of it's absconding. Uh, and when they abscond, you're not finding them on a branch somewhere else. They're just leaving and going to your other hives. So that's a good question. Do I charge by the hour or size of the cutout? I charge a base fee. So the base fee covers up to 4 hours. If it takes more than 4 hours, then I charge by the hour. So if I have to go out and it's an hour cutout, I charge the same amount as if it's a 4 hour cutout. So because it takes me 2 hours to get all my stuff ready, I've got my BVAC that I've got to charge that that I own. I've got other things happening that I have to bring along, and then Steve's got to organize stuff too. So just for me to go out there is a base fee, and then that'll cover up to 4 hours. Anything more than that, we've gone over 4 hours one time, and it was the 6 hour one that they didn't pay us on. So uh, yeah, it's usually we can get it done in 4. So anyway, if you're looking or thinking about doing cutouts, they do pay decently well. You can run a business if you're healthy and like that kind of thing, then yeah, absolutely. This could be a business. I don't know that there's enough to do this as a full time, but certainly as a sideline, you could run something like this. And there's other companies locally that do that. So Riverview Road Apiary obviously does it, and Steve's paid as a contractor. Um, but there's Peoria Honey Company. They also do it. Realize in cutouts, you're also going to have to carry things like insurance for, and then I usually have people sign a um, something to hold me not liable if they get stung and or there's some damage that unintentional damage. So I have again another document, legal document, and I also have the insurance that I carry for this. Here's another cutout from a house that we did. I don't know if this video will play. I think it will. This is an old farmhouse. This was the where the right that area is where the bees are. That's the bee vac we use. It's the everything bee vac. We found that's the best one. They have the highest survival rate in that. Basically 100% of everything I vacuum in that will survive as long as the vacuum stays on at all times. And then afterwards, when we're done with the cutout, you turn the vacuum on its side. It gives them a larger area to cover and they don't overheat. The main issue with bees dying in the situation is when they overheat. And that happens relatively quickly if you don't take care of them. But I've got a short video here to show of the bees. So I go in there, and this is after the cutout's done. It was late in the season, so there's a dearth going on. So all of these are robber bees. This is nothing to these. We've already vacuumed up. That the 5 gallon bucket was already full of bees. These are robber bees from areas you can actually see them wrestling if you look real close at the bees in there. But yeah, that's an area that was the total size of the hive, and we walked away with a full 5 gallon bucket. Again, you're on scaffolding, which is, you're standing, that's a 6 foot scaffold section. So you're standing on top of the 6 foot scaffold section and trying uh, not to get stung, although Steve's wearing shorts in that video. So he does get stung all the time. Oh, and there's a time lapse as well. Are there questions? I usually get a lot of questions about cutouts. Are there any questions from you guys about cutouts? Because I'm going to keep going. Great. All right. I have a lot of lessons learned from this. The first question is educating people and realizing most people can't tell the difference between a honeybee and a wasp. I pulled this off of probably Facebook or somewhere. I should find out. There's gardening success tips. I should give them full credit for this. This is a pretty good image of it. Even giving this to folks, I would say that 75% of the time they still cannot tell the difference between a honeybee and a yellow jacket. I charge, I will identify it for them for free if they text it to me or email me it. If I do have to go out to the site, I have a base fee that I will charge. I give them every opportunity to figure out what it is before I go out there. And then after that point, if I have to go out there still because they insist I go out there, I insist I get paid for my time going out there. But some of the lessons are learning from your bees. So really expand on what you can handle. Remember that bottle that I showed earlier? That bottle that I showed earlier is doing something small really well rather than a whole large amount of things poorly. So focus on quality. Communicate clearly, as our honeybees do, right? Clear communication builds relationships, and realistically, businesses are about relationships, but beekeeping is also about relationships. And then education generates goodwill, sales, and removes fear and doubt. With all those things, right, people feel better about themselves, which they're more willing and more focused on you. They're more willing to come back to you as a customer, right? If as long as you're treating them as a person and educating them about the bees and um, and that's probably true on most businesses that we start or businesses that we're a part of. Treat people like people and remove fear and doubt, and it'll generate goodwill. Protect your brand identity. So bad stories spread faster than good ones. So try not to screw up. Don't treat, again, this goes back to treating people well, because we've all heard stories about, a company that treated you poorly. People very rarely tell stories about these people treating me so excellently and they were so nice, right? When that story doesn't, it's not as exciting. It doesn't get gossiped as much. So I also am approached by people very often that would like for me to put bees on their property, and that would be great for them. They're really excited about it. They could put them on their property, and I'd have a free spot to put my bees. Uh, and that works until they don't want them on their property anymore. And I don't know how many of you have actually tried to move a full hive of bees. And usually you have to move them at night when they're not happy to be moved or messed with, but it's not a pleasant process. So, my opinion on this is that if somebody suggests that you put bees on their property and they don't want to pay you for it, and they are your bees, I would not put it on their property. This is it's becomes you doing a favor for, or them doing a favor for you, and then they don't want the bees there anymore, and they don't realize the huge amount of effort it takes to move that and how many times you're going to get stung moving those bees off their property. Uh, Another lesson I learned is don't undercharge. Your perceived value is often tied to monetary value. So if you are undercharging and you're not charging enough for whatever you do and or sell, people believe it's a cheap product. And honey, anything tied to bees is a lot of work and is not a cheap product. It is an investment of time and effort and emotion. So don't undercharge for what you do. Have realize that what you're charging is how they're going to see it to a point. But yeah, don't undercharge. And then if you don't love beekeeping, I would not make this, I would not suggest this as a business. I've had quite a few sleepless nights worrying about my honeybees. I've had some pretty miserable experiences I've had to live through either with customers and or folks working for me. That's already happened. So if you don't love this in general, then don't make it a business. And if you don't want to be a business, you don't have to be a business. However, to that point, anybody that has honeybees should have, in my opinion, should have an LLC. And the reason why is because people that have honeybees that appreciate honeybees usually will spend money going to do things honeybee related, having talks, going to classes, going to there's going to honey tasting, going to places that sell honey, or buying honey from different locations. Those are all things that can be written off against your LLC to as you're expanding your education for that. So if you don't have an LLC and you are keeping bees, I would 100% do that. It'll save you money in the long term and actually helps you keep track of what you're doing as far as expenses for your honeybees as well. Many people say that you can't make money off of being a beekeeper. I don't think that that's true. I've proven that that's not true. You can make money off of being a beekeeper. It's better to be able to offset that money that you're making so you're not paying taxes on being a beekeeper. So that'd be my opinion on that. There's also a huge amount of payoff, right? The picture on the left, I got to speak for St. Jude's this year. So I spoke. This is one of the families that does like a dinner for St. Jude money raising. That's one of the swarms I caught this year. That swarm is probably about 3.5 feet long. I got called for that one. It's a continued opportunity to learn. I love learning in general. If you know me, it doesn't really matter what it's about. I'll enjoy taking time to stop and learn about it. But if it's about honeybees, I'll take a lot of time to stop and learn about it. It gives you some income, so extra money that you can spend but December through February tend to be pretty slow months. The bees are all bottled up, and unless you're doing something else, either honey tastings or things like that, you're not going to make a lot of money. It improves community awareness, right? Again, we've talked about people that can't tell the difference between a honeybee and a wasp. It builds trust with the public. And also there's word of mouth marketing, which is nice, right? I've been recognized a few times by folks that I don't know as the Chillicothe bee guy. So that's it. As word of mouth is something that does spread. And then by following this path that I've set, it's a sustainable model that keeps both me as a beekeeper and other beekeepers healthy by not being stung, but still doing something out in the world. And I find it very fulfilling and sustainable. So, looking ahead, the things that I'm struggling with that I need to do better on is better advertising. I don't do a good job of advertising locally, I don't believe. That's something I've struggled with all the time. The reason I brought up the charging the right amount for your product, I struggle with that as well, and that's part of advertising too. I'd like to have more public partnerships. I find that public partnerships both come and go. I've worked with a couple of restaurants and that carry my product or use my product, and sometimes those restaurants close or they just change their menu and they no longer carry your product. I'm going to have more training programs in the future. One, because I enjoy it, but two, because I want local beekeepers that really know their stuff. And so uh, I'm going to charge for those, right? Because I've spent a long time, one, educating myself, and two, setting those programs up. But I still want to make them a cost value that is beneficial to both us, me as the teacher, and the student as well. And then my goal is to change my product to be more of an experience and not just a producer of honey. Sometimes we get in my head, I do at least, get in my head to be like, well, I'm taking care of bees and I'm producing honey. And I think that it can be more than that, with, you know, more classes, more honey tastings, more hive tours, and things along those lines. So here's my contact information, email, phone number. There's the podcast information as well. Is there any questions? I was going to open it up to the chat to see if there's any other questions that I didn't cover that you guys would be interested in.
Do you find it difficult to have so many different ways of income, like to keep up with all of that?
So,
Instead, because I
yeah,
know some people I've heard say, find what you're good at and stick with the one thing, if it's going to be honey or if it's going to be nukes.
right. Yeah, that's a good question. So to find what you're good at and be good at that one thing, you should. That's not wrong, right? But if I've only ever tried one thing, I don't know the rest. I'm my strength right now is creating honey, right? And that's where most of my money comes from. The My secondary is my classes, and I've had pretty good success. One, because I keep my class size small, and two, because uh, it's hands-on courses for new beekeepers. So there's quite a bit of income from that. So I don't, for me, I would say try different things. Like have something that's your focus. Try different things. The hive management for other people, I really enjoy it and find that it for me it's sustainable at this point. But honey probably still is my primary source of income. So that kind of answers your question. But do I
Yeah.
find it difficult? I don't think it's difficult. It's all kind of in the same direction. So for me, it's not too much of a stretch in my opinion.
Okay.
I do have helpers, right? Seasonal workers, helpers that help me, and that has made it much more manageable. Finding a 16-year-old that'll show up every day can be hard for some people, I've heard, but uh, Hank's the one I use right now, and he's awesome. And he's going to school right now, so I kind of miss it that he's going to high school, but high school is a priority in my opinion. Education is a priority in my opinion, but he's still super, super good at helping me out when I need him around. So sometimes you need paying for a helper, even though it's some cost to you. I find that you can get more done uh, than doing it just on your own. I also didn't talk about taxes and things. I also use, they don't pay me. I use QuickBooks though for keeping track of all my expenditures. And then my website, which is Riverview Road Apiary, uh, that one is based on Shopify. So the nice part about Shopify too is that if somebody else uses Shopify, you can sell your product on their website, and they get paid for. So you sell it at a discount to them. They get paid the full price. You get paid the discount price, and then you handle shipping. So I currently have that. I do that with Blackbeard canning, and then for honey, and then with I also do that with a bee company that makes bees for native or makes a nest for native bees. It's a really good quality company.
Luke, I have a question about the Russian bees. Have you found that they survive better in winters and do they produce more honey?
The Russian bees, it's a good question. I think that there's no magic bees out there. They don't exist, right? Doesn't like the best bees that I found overall are my bees that that overwinter, right? That overwinter well with my hive management. The Russians tend to be more aggressive. They're darker bees. I have a Russian hive currently that shows strong Russian traits. They produce less honey overall. They overwinter on less honey, and they grow slower in spring. And then they shut down a little bit earlier than all the rest of my Carniolans and Italian hives. So, do I think that they're worth the extra money? I wouldn't necessarily say that they're worth the extra money. They're not terribly gentle. If you're afraid of being stung or afraid of bees bumping in your face, that's then I would not have Russian bees, or certainly not have a majority of Russian bees on my property. Am I a Shopify expert? Scott, I am a Shopify expert. The person that built my website, however, is also a Shopify expert, and I paid somebody a graphic designer to come up with the Riverview Road Apiary logo and the color scheme and things like that. So that was hired out. The build of the website overall was hired out, but I do all changes on that currently. If you need his name, I'm happy to share that with you. It's I'm really happy with my experience so far with Shopify. I put recipes on there. I have a blog on there. I put all of my episodes of Beekeeping Buddies on there. Yeah, Scott, reach out to me and we can talk. I'm happy to to share my contacts. He does do it for a living, so he probably will charge and um but he'll be very straightforward on what he does. He always delivers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll send you my guy. I have a lawyer make out the contract. I had a lawyer review the contract that I made um, through there's a online website called something. Hold on, I'll look it up. But I did not have a lawyer make it. I had a lawyer review it. The lawyer that I had review it was when I still worked at Caterpillar, and they said, yeah, it's enough to protect you from someone being uh, ignorant. And however, if somebody's going to come on your apiary and get stung because they want to get stung, it doesn't really matter. They're gonna try to get stung and then sue you anyway. Law Depot is the company I work with for making a bunch of contracts, and they work pretty well for me. So if there's not any more questions, I'll go ahead and end this. I appreciate you guys listening to me talk for a whole hour. If you have feedback for me, just let me know. If you have questions for me and want to contact me directly, I'm happy to talk to you, answer questions. My phone number's up there. It's easier to text me than it is to call me. However, this time of year when things are slowing down, I do have a little bit more time. I am in the process of feeding some of my light hives overwintered. I just took a video of them today. They went through. I did some open feeding today to see how aggressive they would be with open feeding. They went through 70 pounds of honey in about an hour, or not honey, sugar water, in about an hour in the back of my apiary. So they're pretty hungry still. Now, I am feeding basically every hive within a 3-mile radius or so. And I will go through November timeframe and I'll oxalic acid my bees. But if you listen to our podcast, I talk about that as well. So I really appreciate it again. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks, Luke.
Mhm.